ఆ రాష్ట్రాన్ని బాలిలో జరిగాయి. అంతకుముందు జరిగినటువంటి సమావేశాలు కూడా స్టేట్ క్యాపిటల్, నేషనల్ క్యాపిటల్లోనే జరిగాయి. కానీ ఈరోజు మన నరేంద్ర మోడీ గారు కానీ జయశంకర్ గారి ఆలోచన ఢిల్లీలో కాదు జరపాల్సింది, ఢిల్లీలో కూడా జరగాలి, కానీ దేశంలో అన్ని ముఖ్యమైన నగరాల్లో జరగాలని నిర్ణయించారు. ఇటీవల టూరిజానికి సంబంధించినటువంటి ఫస్ట్ మీటింగు కచ్లో జరిగితే మేము ఎయిర్పోర్ట్ నుంచి బయలుదేరి కచ్కి వెళ్ళేంత వరకు కూడా, భుజు ఎయిర్పోర్ట్ నుంచి కచ్కి వెళ్ళేంత వరకు కూడా దారి పొడుగున గ్రామాలని తెరలొచ్చి మొత్తం వస్తున్నటువంటి G20కి సంబంధించిన డెలిగేట్స్ బస్సెస్ ఏవైతే ఉంటాయో ఆ బస్సుకు స్వాగతం పలుకుతూ గ్రామీణ ప్రజలందరూ కూడా అద్భుతంగా డ్యాన్సులతో మరి ఆ రోజు ఇటీవల జరిగినటువంటి సమావేశాలు ఒక దగ్గర కాదు, దేశంలో ఎక్కడ జరిగినా కూడా. అందుకే 56 నగరాలలో 250 సమావేశాలు ఈ యొక్క G20 కంట్రీలో సంబంధించినటువంటి సమావేశాలు జరుగుతూ ఉన్నాయి. G20 కంట్రీకి సంబంధించిన డీటెయిల్స్ అని వారు చెప్తారు. ఒకటే ఇందులో మన యొక్క సంస్కృతి, మన యొక్క పర్యాటక కేంద్రాల, మన యొక్క జీవన విధానము, మన తినే తిండి, మన భాష, మన కల్చరు ఏ రకంగా ఈరోజు ప్రపంచ దేశాలకు ఈరోజు, ఎందుకంటే G20 కంట్రీకి సంబంధించినటువంటి ఇంపార్టెన్స్ సుభాష్ రెడ్డి గారు చెప్పారు. నేను మళ్ళీ దానికి సంబంధించినటువంటి డీటెయిల్ చెప్పదలుచుకోలేదు. ప్రపంచాన్ని శాసించేటువంటి దేశాలు ఏవైనా ఉన్నాయంటే అవి G20 కంట్రీకి సంబంధించినటువంటి సమావేశాలు. ఆ G20 కంట్రీకి సంబంధించినటువంటి ఒక రంగం కాదు, అది టూరిజం కానీ, అది కల్చర్ కానీ, ఆర్థిక శాస్త్రవేత్తలు కానీ, లేకపోతే ఆర్థికవేత్తలు కానీ, లేక అన్ని రంగాలకు సంబంధించినటువంటి యూత్ లీడర్స్ కానీ, సెక్యూరిటీకి సంబంధించిన లీడర్స్ కానీ, G20కి సంబంధించినటువంటి ఈ రకంగా 250 రకాల సమావేశం, 250 ఇండస్ట్రియలిస్ట్ నుంచి మొదలు పెడితే ఉమెన్ ఎంపవర్మెంట్ నుంచి, యూత్ ఎంపవర్మెంట్ నుంచి, విలేజ్ ఎంపవర్మెంట్ నుంచి, అగ్రికల్చర్, అన్ని రకాలుగా 250 రకాల సమావేశాలు ఇండియాలో డిసెంబర్ నుంచి 22 నుంచి డిసెంబర్ 2023 వరకు ఒక ఇయర్ పాటు సమావేశాలు జరుగుతున్నాయి. ఈ సమావేశాలన్నీ కూడా 56 నగరాలలో జరగబోతా ఉన్నాయి. ఈ 56 నగరాల్లో జరిగినటువంటి సమావేశాల ద్వారా సుమారు చాలా వేలాది మంది ఫారిన్ డెలిగేట్స్ వస్తారు. ఇంపార్టెంట్ క్రీమ్ ఆఫ్ ది వరల్డ్ ఆ యొక్క G20 కంట్రీకి సంబంధించినటువంటి సమావేశాలలో ఇండియాకి రాబోతున్నారు. వచ్చినప్పుడు మన దేశానికి సంబంధించినటువంటి మరి ఎవరైతే ఈ సమావేశాలకు వస్తారో ఆ డెలిగేట్స్ తిరిగి ఆ సమావేశాల నుంచి వాళ్ళ దేశాలకు వెళ్ళినప్పుడు, వాళ్ళ నగరాలకు వెళ్ళినప్పుడు, వాళ్ళ ఇంటికి వెళ్ళినప్పుడు వాళ్ళందరూ కూడా ఇండియా అంబాసిడర్స్గా మారిపోయి భారతదేశంలో మేము వెళ్ళినప్పుడు అద్భుతమైనటువంటి స్వాగతం ఇచ్చారు, అద్భుతమైనటువంటి ఆతిథ్యం ఇచ్చారు, అద్భుతమైనటువంటి నగరం అది, అద్భుతమైనటువంటి కల్చర్ వాళ్ళది, అద్భుతమైనటువంటి పర్యాటక కేంద్రాలు ఉన్నాయి. ప్రపంచంలో ఏ దేశంలో లేనటువంటి మరి అతి ప్రాచీనమైనటువంటి కళా సంపద ఎక్కడుందంటే అది భారతదేశంలో ఉందని ఈ దేశానికి వచ్చేటువంటి ప్రతి టూరిస్టు, ఈ దేశానికి వచ్చినటువంటి ప్రతి డెలిగేటు భారతీయ అంబాసిడర్గా వాళ్ళ దేశాలలో వెళ్ళి మన దేశం గురించి ప్రచారం చేయాలనేటువంటి లక్ష్యము ఈరోజు నరేంద్ర మోడీ గారు ఒక వేసేటువంటి ప్రతి అడుగు, మాట్లాడేటువంటి ప్రతి మాట వెనుక ఎన్నో రకాలుగా ఆలోచన చేసి ఆయన ముందుకెళ్తూ ఉంటాడు. కాబట్టి G20 కంట్రీకి సంబంధించి కూడా ఈరోజు 56 నగరాలు అద్భుతంగా అలంకారం చేస్తూ ఉన్నారు. కొన్ని నగరాలు చేయడం లేదు, అది వేరే విషయం అనుకోండి. మీకు తెలియదు కాబట్టి నేను చెప్తున్నాను. అద్భుతమైనటువంటి అలంకారం చేస్తూ ఉన్నారు, చాలా అద్భుతంగా జరుగుతూ ఉన్నాయి. ప్రజలందరూ పాల్గొంటున్నారు. ఏ ప్రాంతానికి వెళ్తే ఆ ప్రాంతానికి సంబంధించినటువంటి సాంస్కృతిక కార్యక్రమం, ఏ ప్రాంతానికి వెళ్తే, ఏ నగరానికి వెళ్తే ఆ నగరానికి సంబంధించినటువంటి ఆహారము, ఎక్కడ వెళ్తే అక్కడ మేము గుజరాత్కి వెళ్తే అనేక రకాలుగా గ్రామీణ ప్రజలు ఎవరైతే సెల్ఫ్ హెల్ప్ గ్రూప్స్ వస్తువులు, బట్టలు తయారు చేస్తారో వాళ్ళు తెచ్చి డెలిగేట్స్ చేయడం, సెల్ఫ్ హెల్ప్ గ్రూప్కి సంబంధించినటువంటి ఐటమ్స్, ప్రొడక్ట్స్ తయారు చేస్తారో వాళ్ళు వచ్చి వాళ్ళ ఎంట్రీ వాళ్ళకి ఇవ్వడం, వాళ్ళు ఏ రకంగా తన్మయం పొందుతున్నారో ఆ డెలిగేట్స్ అర్థం కానటువంటి పరిస్థితి. అద్భుతంగా ఆ రకంగా వాళ్ళందరినీ కూడా మనం కల్టివేట్ చేసి మన దేశాన్ని యొక్క సంబంధించినటువంటి గొప్పతనాన్ని వాళ్ళ ద్వారా ప్రపంచానికి చాటేటువంటి ప్రయత్నం చేస్తూ ఉన్నాము. ఇది రానున్న రోజుల్లో భారతదేశానికి నాకు తెలిసినంత వరకు 1 సంవత్సరం పాటు ఫారెన్ డెలిగేట్స్తో సమావేశాలు జరగడము ప్రపంచంలో మరి భారతదేశానికి వస్తున్నటువంటి గొప్ప ఘన విజయం అని చెప్పి ఈ సందర్భంగా భావిస్తూ నేను సెలవు తీసుకుంటున్నాను. జై హింద్.
Sabhamukanga, Kishan Reddy gariki ధన్యవాదాలు. Thank you so much, sir, for your insightful and informative talk. We are really overwhelmed with understanding how India's tourism has gone to the next level under the leadership of Narendra Modi ji and you too. And now, may I request Ms. Swati Satyabama garu to present a patriotic song.
Thank you. वंदना माँ तुझे वंदना, हम करें तेरी आराधना, शान तेरी बढ़ाए, मान तेरा बढ़े, लो हमारा सलाम, पुण्य भूमि कर्म भूमि भारत माता। वंदना माँ तुझे वंदना, हम करें तेरी आराधना, मानवता का तू ही रूप है विश्व में, एकता का सही रूप दिखलाए, मानवता का तू ही रूप है विश्व में, एकता का सही रूप दिखलाए, भिन्न धर्मों का संगम मेरा भारत महान, हाँ इशारा मोहब्बत ये है भारत महान, हम करेंगे तन को मन को अर्पण, माननीय वंदनीय भारत माता। वंदनम जननी कभिवंदनम, पलकुदाम धरणि जनुलंदरम, प्रणव मंत्रानिके प्राणमी भारतम, जगति सर्वानिके वेदनाद जीवधार चिलिकिन देशम। Thank you.
Thank you. So before we proceed with our chief guest speech, I would like to inform sir that today in our gathering there are vice chancellors, serving vice chancellors, retired defense personnel, and then we have former DGPs, Mr. Arvind Rao, Mr. Jaishankar ji, and so many other. I mean, Hanuman Chaudhary ji, our senior most member of the Pragya Bharati is also here. And then we have Vice Chancellor, Mr. Suresh here, Tirupati Rao. The students, there are many bureaucrats, chartered accountants, lawyers and all. So they have come to hear you, sir, on this subject. I thank one and all for having come here for this event. And I would like to acknowledge the cooperation of iFocus, Javasdev Sharma, whose cooperation was there for giving us the logistic support for this program. Now I request Vyoma to kindly introduce the chief guest.
And now I would like to introduce the man of the moment, the keynote speaker for today's program, none other than Dr. S. Jaishankar garu, External Affairs Minister, India. And now, before I proceed and formally introduce, I think I would use two adjectives that are absolutely apt, and sir is an epitome of that would be diplomacy and assertive in putting India's voice across in any of the meetings that he had been any time. I'm sure he definitely needs no introduction because we had heard him several times, but yet let me take this privilege, honor to really introduce this esteemed keynote speaker for today, Dr. S. Jaishankar garu. Dr. S. Jaishankar garu is India's External Affairs Minister since May 30, 2019. He is a member of the Upper House, Rajya Sabha of India's Parliament from the state of Gujarat. He was Foreign Secretary from 2015 up till 18, Ambassador to United States 2013 up till 15, China 2009 up till 2013, Singapore 2007 up till 2009, and Czech Republic 2000 to 2004. Sir has also served in other diplomatic assignments in embassies in Moscow, Colombo, Budapest, and Tokyo, as well as in the Ministry of External Affairs and the President's Secretariat. He was also the President, Global Corporate Affairs at Tata Sons Private Limited from May 2018. Dr. S. Jaishankar garu is a graduate of St. Stephen's College at the University of Delhi. He has a master's in political science and an MPhil and PhD in international relations from Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi. He is a recipient of the Padma Shri Award in 2019 and and has written a widely acclaimed best-selling book, The India Way, Strategies for an Uncertain World, which was published in 2020. May I now request Sir to definitely deliver a talk and a message to us to really make us all think and think at the end of his speech. Thank you so much, sir. We all welcome you. May I request all of you to put your hands together?
Thank you. Thank you very much. My ministerial colleague, Shri Kishan Reddy ji, Justice Subhash Reddy ji, Shri N. Ramachandra Rao ji, friends of the media, all the distinguished personalities gathered here. I'm really extremely happy today that I have the opportunity to come here, meet all of you, talk about something which is very important, which is very topical, and which Hyderabad has a very deep connection, because I think 6 G20 events will be held here during the course of the year. Now, before I come to G20, I'm also very happy to be associated with the release of this book. And there's a reason. Actually, there are many reasons. One, I have a chapter. So that's a very good reason. I recommend you read it. But I must say there are some better chapters in the book. You know, when this book came out, and I'm really very happy that you have taken the initiative to bring out a Telugu translation. Many of us have traveled around India, spoken about our Prime Minister using this book. And I hope when you all read it, I recommend 2 chapters other than my own. One is actually a very interesting piece written by our Home Minister, Amit Bhai Shah, which actually brings out Prime Minister Modi's political acumen, his thinking, his strategic vision. It's a very, very interesting chapter. As someone who spent a long period, you know, along with him in politics. In fact, I think we are, the only 2 politicians who have written in this book. The other chapter, and I recommend it particularly for the younger people in the audience, please read the chapter of P.V. Sindhu. Read the chapter of P.V. Sindhu because it gives a young person's perspective of our Prime Minister. That what is it in him which appeals to the youth of this country. So I thought before I come to the subject, let me address this issue. Now, about the G20. The importance of the G20, I think both Justice Reddy and Kishan Reddy ji mentioned. Today, it accounts, these 20 countries account for 85% of the GDP of the world, 65% of the population of the world, 75% of the trade of the world. But in reality, premier forum to set the directions in which the world should go. Because the remit, the responsibility, the job of the G20 is actually to look at the challenges to economic development, to growth, to find solutions, to look at new areas which are coming up, which are challenges to the world, to find solutions for them. And these, the regular meeting, because the G20 meets every year, this regular meeting actually for the last, from 2008, because it became at the level of Prime Minister President then, this has been an increasingly important forum. Now, this forum has, of course, a meeting at the President Prime Minister level, which will happen in September. There are 15 ministerial tracks. The foreign ministers is one, finance ministers is very important. There are many other tracks. And again, just as an example, yesterday in Bengaluru, the finance ministers and the central bank governors track met. And the focus of the discussion was on cryptocurrency, was on debt, how to deal with debt, because increasingly countries today, for reasons which I will explain, are going into debt, and how to reform multilateral development institutions and banks. So I mention this because it shows to you how relevant it is, how important it is, how topical it is, that the new issues which are coming up, but the old problems which also have to be addressed, all these today are being dealt with by the G20. Now, we took over the presidency of the G20 on 1st December last year. And I would say this, it's a particularly important moment to take over the presidency. It's a particularly responsible moment. Why? Because the world today needs direction, world needs leadership, world needs a strategy, a collective strategy, as never before. And there are very, very good reasons for that. The global situation, as we take up the G20, is today perhaps more concerning than it has been for a very, very long time. There are 4 big issues in the world. One, all of us are familiar with the impact of the COVID pandemic. Now, we all know the COVID pandemic as something which came from some other country. It has affected all of us. I think there is nobody in the room who would not have directly experienced, or family member or friends. Many of us have suffered losses. But please think about the impact of the COVID on the global economy. What happened with COVID was, the entire world discovered that we are all depending on one country, one region, to supply many of the essential goods for the world. That in the name of globalization, we actually created a very over-centralized economic system. And this has, when it breaks down, has created very, very serious problems. So the world today is looking for, it's like in business. Nobody in business, even if you're a small business, nobody depends on a single supplier, because God forbid something happens. But what happened to the world? The world actually, somewhere in all the propaganda and the myth and the delusion and the attractiveness of globalization, everybody went in one direction. And what has today happened is, there is a search across the world for more suppliers, for reliable suppliers, for multiple suppliers. And this is today a very big issue which is affecting the global economy. A related issue, because the COVID put a lot of stress on the economies of different countries. We have seen in our own region, every one of our neighbors is having some difficulty, some more severe, some less severe. Now, the debt issue has become a very serious issue. That there are today more than 75 countries in the world who are having serious problems meeting their debt obligations. But you can't solve the debt issue if you do not reform the financial system. So that goes to the next area. And in all of this, what is security? We think in terms of when we say security, we say, okay, economic security is important. But economic security is not only the state of the finances. When COVID happened, and we discovered that, in fact, a lot of things we had to import from abroad. There was a period when even masks, when PPEs, when ventilators, when intermediates and basics for base materials for even pharmaceuticals. All these were coming from abroad. Today, I think the world has learned a lesson that security means not only physical security, not only economic security, it also means health security, it means food security. So we today have to find a way of de-risking the global economy. The way we would de-risk a sector, the way we would de-risk a business. And that is a very major debate and I would say a very major concern of what the G20 would be looking at. The second concern is, of course, the Ukraine conflict. The Ukraine conflict is already something which is hugely damaging because in this era, the destruction, the casualties, all of you have seen pictures of it. But again, look at the bigger consequences of the Ukraine conflict. As a result, oil prices have doubled, food prices have gone up, fertilizer has become not only more expensive, but sometimes even difficult for many countries to get. At least in our country, Modi government has ensured fertilizer prices have not gone up. Modi government has tried to cushion the consumer as much as possible, even from petrol price increases. And we have tried to see how to keep inflation down. But the reality is many other countries, many other governments are not able to do this. So if you go around the world and ask people, what is your big concern today? Why are you worried about Ukraine? They will say, yes, we are against the war. But they will also say, we have issues with food, we have issues with fertilizer, we have issues with fuel. Their costs, and this is also something the G20 has to look at. A third issue, of course, predates this. These are the big global issues of our times. Climate change. For many years we keep hearing that we must do more on climate. We agree, we must all do more. Who does not in this room agree we should not do more? But we can only do more if there is more resources, if there is more finance. So a big issue today is how do you get serious green finance in order to increase the ambition to tackle the climate challenge. I refer to health. Again, we have come through this pandemic. Okay. Turn which they, were given. I tell you, as someone who's traveling during COVID from 2020, did not see vaccines, saw limited vaccines, saw late vaccines, did not have the ability to get it into their population, could not get the shots in the arm. So pandemic today has left a very deep psychological scar in the world, but a deep sense of anger that the developed countries looked after themselves during the pandemic, and barring India, and I will talk about that separately, barring India, very, very few countries actually made an effort to think about the rest of the world. And then, of course, there is terrorism. There was a time when, and we, still are particular targets, but more and more there's a realization it's a global issue. And that financing is a key part of blocking, how to block the financing is very important for countering terrorism. So, COVID this is one part of it. There's another part of it. There are roughly about 200 countries in the world. At the G20, there are 20. We have called another 9 countries as guests, so let us say there are 30. 170 countries have an interest in what is the most important meeting in the world, but they are not there. Now, for the first time, one country, one prime minister decided, I will now talk to those countries and also get their views about how the G20 would be run, and particularly the countries of the global south. Countries of the global south, because these are developing countries, they are the countries who are hurting the most today in this situation. So if you ask me today, tell me very in simple language, what is the G20 about? What will happen when G20 takes place? I would say 2 things will happen. G20 is getting India world ready for the world. G20 is about getting the world ready for India. This is really what it is about. Now, you can ask me, why should the world be ready? Why should India be ready for the world? You know, we have existed for thousands of years. So has the world. We have to be ready for the world because there are a lot of possibilities there which will make a huge difference for our future. If we understand it, if we in a way utilize it, if we partner with it. And let me give you, to my mind, and I've really spent a lot of time thinking about it, 5 big reasons. 5 reasons why India should actually prepare to be more active in the world. The first is a very obvious one. The more we partner with the world, the faster we can actually accelerate our development. Now, normally you've heard this from many people, our FDI has increased so much. This is only one small element of what a partnership with the world is about. Because a partnership with the world is about capital, it is about technology, you get best practices, you get markets for our products, our services, our exports, and we need resources. Because remember, today, we are the 5th largest economy in the world, and we need actually more. We are also importing more and more resources. Now, in a way, it is very obvious to say this in Hyderabad, because you look at what has happened in your own immediate, in the city and in the region, that how much more global you have become, how you have used technology, how actually from, your own state, your own region, your own city, how much more you are dealing with the rest of the world. We have to think of the world today as a global workplace. That Indian talent, Indian skill, Indian capabilities, these do not have to stay anymore within India. They actually can go out in big numbers. There is a huge demand in the world. If you look today, there are developed countries where there is a demand, but there's no demographics. The young people are not there. The talent is not there. The skills are not there, not in those numbers. So when we actually interact with the world, especially in the last few years, we have seen this demand today for Indian talent and Indian skill. But if we have to get the full benefit of it, we will get it only when in India we prepare for it, that we ensure there is skills, that there is education, that there is talent, there is innovation, and there is protection and fairness to the people who go outside. But today, the one big part of what is happening between us and the world is the world as a workplace. We should prepare for that. And you can prepare for it, for the professionals, for the tech people, really by reaching agreements. And we have done. If you look, since Prime Minister Modi has come, we've done agreements with Germany, with Austria, with France, with Portugal, with UK, with Denmark. So there are a number of countries, with Japan. And we have opened these societies as workplaces for our skills and talent. But there are also, other economies where actually blue-collar workers go in very large numbers. If you
Thank you, sir.
Good evening to all. Honorable Union Minister, External Affairs, the dynamic Sri Subramanyam Jaishankar ji, ఫార్మర్ జస్టిస్ ఆఫ్ సుప్రీం కోర్ట్ శ్రీ సుభాష్ రెడ్డి గారు, మై ఫ్రెండ్ సీనియర్ అడ్వకేట్ ఫార్మర్ లెజిస్లేటివ్ కౌన్సిల్ శ్రీ రామచంద్రరావు గారు, ఇంకా వేదిక ముందు చాలామంది వివిధ రంగాల నుంచి ప్రముఖులైనటువంటి పెద్దలందరూ వచ్చారు. అదేవిధంగా మీడియా ఫ్రెండ్స్ అందరి